Bet on Bears fans, another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast coming your way. Pat the Designer, Courtney Cronin back. And she's just been on every TV show imaginable over the last couple of weeks. I thought I saw you on The Price is Right, Courtney. You've been everywhere on every channel. How are you doing?
I'm good. If that Price is Right person is out there somehow, my doppelganger, man, let me know what you want, because that is on my bucket list. That is, if I could get on that show and somehow compete and spin the big wheel, then we know that I will have made it. That is the one thing that's in my career that I have not done yet.
That's the one. That's the one we're waiting on. Listen, the Bears doing a lot of wheel spinning right now as they're preparing for the draft here. And we are getting ready to do the mock draft portion of this. And Courtney, I must say, listen, I know it's a little more difficult for us to find content in this time, but it is nice not to be on mock draft 8.9 because we kind of know the direction that the Chicago Bears need to go. Me and Courtney are going to go pick by pick and do our 7-round mock draft. We have both done a mock draft each, and we're going to see kind of how we feel this Bears team is going to be looking heading into next season. All that and more on today's episode of the Chicago Bears podcast. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Without further ado, because this is going to get a lot of explaining and talking about different players that we think fit here. Let's start it off, Courtney, and I'll give you the honors of breaking ground here.
Yep.
Where are you starting with pick 25 for the Chicago Bears? I would assume somewhere defensive.
No. Which is why this might throw everything off from the very jump. And this, so what we do at ESPN, we have our annual NFL Nation mock draft, which I believe it's sometime next week before the draft. It's they do a TV show. They have each of us come on to put out our, explanation as to why we picked a certain player. And a little spoiler here, this is going to be my pick in that draft because this player was still on the board when I was on the clock at 25. Same thing happened here at 25 when I used the PFF mock draft simulator. So I went with Caden Proctor, the left tackle from Alabama, who, both times was available to me in the mock draft with ESPN. I was a little surprised. And when I saw it here, I had the choice between a couple different defensive ends that I could draft. Yes. And the reason I went with Proctor is twofold. Number one, I think that the conversation around the uncertainty at left tackle that Ben Johnson brought up at NFL owners meetings, and that, it's very clear here. I had a conversation with Ryan Poles about this too. I published a story a couple weeks ago that, they're going to keep all their options open, including the draft. Now, is it a bit of a tough thing to have a rookie come in and start at left tackle? Absolutely. But is it better than your options right now with Braxton Jones, Jedrick Wills, Karan Amagaji, Theo Benedict? I say yes. I think that this is a position, because the offensive line was so critical to the success of this offense, you can't let that become a revolving door. Yes, they did handle it pretty darn well last year in getting Ozzie Trapillo up to speed eventually to become your starting left tackle. But now that his injury causes some concern, not just for this season, but potentially beyond that, because we really don't know. I mean, yes, he's progressing. That's what Ryan Poles told me at owners meetings. But who knows the type of player he comes back as. So I think this solves a need for right now, and I think it potentially could solve a need for long term. But also, Joe Thuney's not going to play forever. Jonah Jackson is not as old as Joe Thuney, but isn't going to play forever. So for somebody who has arms that might be on the little bit of the shorter end, I think it's I just pulled this up. He's got 33 and 3/8 inch arms, which most, some draft analysts say might be better suited for him to move inside to guard. You have your long-term option potentially there too. I know that they need a pass rusher, which is why after reading Mel Kiper's mock drafts, Field Yates, for months we've had these where the second round might be where you strike there. I felt comfortable taking Caden Proctor with my first pick.
You know what? And I think this is so interesting because the only reason I don't have Caden Proctor on my mock draft is because he was taken 2 picks ahead of me. Mm-hmm. And I kind of nerded this one out. I didn't let's redo, the mock draft. I put a legit clock on and I was like, all right, we're going to make, day of decisions. We've broken these players down. He just wasn't available to me. I think everything you said is a reason why I am really high on Caden Proctor. I know some people look at him and say, he's just a massive dude that played in the SEC, and we've seen those SEC offense or those Alabama offensive linemen fizzle out at the NFL level time and time again over the past few years here. But I do think that Caden Proctor is a great name to have on the list. And listen, bottom line is your head coach is an offensive head coach, and he has a lot of final say in there. He's probably going to want to protect his quarterback. So I'm not shocked that you went that direction. I think I would have also gone that direction, just not available to me. At 25, though, I looked at this defense, and I had both Zion Young and Peter Woods available to me. And I went Peter Woods on this because I think the Chicago Bears, not to say that edge isn't an issue, but you look in the second round, and I know all of the fans out there have done these mock drafts. I'm sure when you did yours, you saw this as well, Courtney. There's still some really good names that seem like they are available off of the edge in the second round. So I said, I'm going to take a chance. And me and Shay talked about this on Monday's episode. Zion Young just kind of feels like the lazy pick that a lot of people are throwing at the wall because Dennis Allen came out and he said, listen, I like my defensive ends 260. And I want them, 6'2" to 6'5", and he's got that specific build. Zion Young fits that. But a lot of people to me are ignoring the floor with Zion Young. And that's the part that I feel is just a little bit too low for me to take a chance on at 25 and add that fifth year option to. To me, I look at Peter Woods. I see a guy who has a quick first step, who has immense power. And I did the same thing that Ben Johnson talked about doing last year, right, with the offensive line. He likes to watch that TV version of the tape as well to see, okay, how good of a push are we getting? When you watch Peter Woods consistently, you are seeing centers and guards go the wrong direction. We need that because it's something we did not see on the defensive interior last season. With that, with the amount of edges that I think that you can still get in this draft being available, I went to interior 25, and I feel like that's going to be something that the Bears may look to do in this draft because of the talent that's out there.
Those two names are the names that in every ESPN mock draft, more times than not, it's either Peter Woods from Clemson or it's Zion Young from Missouri.
Yeah.
Knowing that the pass rush, wherever it comes from, I think it was important that Ben Johnson pointed this out at the combine because they have spent a lot of, not him necessarily, but the team itself has spent quite a bit of resources the last couple of years, whether it was Grady Jarrett in free agency during Ben Johnson's first free agency, whether it was, the Shamar Turner in the draft. And, the years before that, it was Javon Dexter. They have spent a lot on the interior of the defensive line of building it from the inside out. That's not to say that that's their philosophy on how to build a pass rush, but they expect the pass rush. They need the pass rush to come from all over the D line, not just from your edge position. Edge is certainly a need, but given where the draft board goes after 25, I think that you can get an edge, a quality one, to potentially start day one instead of reaching at that spot. Yeah. If they have somebody higher on their draft board, they stick to their draft board and they go interior, which I don't think hurts things. I know a lot of people look at this and say, God, they're spending so many of their resources on the interior. What about the edge? They'll address that. But I think for, to have somebody who can be a disruptive three technique, if there's uncertainty about Grady Jarrett, Javon Dexter, the long-term, how those two players fit into your Grady Jarrett's not going to play forever. He's on the other side of 30. Maybe they don't feel like Javon Dexter is as much of a scheme fit. I don't know. I'm not reporting that. I'm just saying that that's something, if they draft an interior defensive lineman there, then maybe that foreshadows something with the players that they currently have. I also think there's, taking the fifth edge rusher potentially after all the, Arvell Reese, Bailey, all these other guys are gone by that point. I think is something that they have to consider. Do you want to take the fifth one when you might have a better second round grade on somebody else that you can get then again at 57? So I understand it. I understand your logic.
Yeah, I think there's going to be names available, and in the second round is where we start to get to some of those names. What direction did you go in the second round of this draft with the first pick? Bears have two picks here, 57 and 60. There's a lot of good opportunity to get players here and build guys that are a part of the future of your team.
So when I was on the clock at 57, I kept hearing in my mind what Ben Johnson said about Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon, that, it was very difficult, he really didn't get to form much of a relationship with them because they weren't playing all that much. And especially someone like Kyler Gordon, who, the injury and just being shut down multiple times last year and not being able to stay healthy, I went with Keontae Scott, who could,
Mm,
you need depth there at nickel. Obviously, last
yeah,
year they had CJ Gardner-Johnson. He's not here anymore, but you know, we all expect Kyler Gordon to come back healthy. He will have a whole offseason to recover, but you do have the history now of a player who has not been able to stay on the field throughout the entirety of a season
yeah,
as the time he's been in Chicago. So I think it's never a bad option to get a high end player to play behind him and also to replenish your depth and your options for a potential starting cornerback in, beyond next year. Remember, Tyreek Stevenson, this is his final year of his contract. He's got to prove to them whether,
yeah,
they've stuck with him over the other corners that they had, meaning Nashawn Wright. They let him walk in free agency. They said, okay, we're going to roll with Tyreek Stevenson. Now, I'm not saying it's a one-for-one comparison. If Stevenson doesn't have a good season, that if you draft Keontae Scott, he'd be great, be able to move outside when he might be a better nickel. But I think it gives you the option there with a second-round pick who's pretty versatile, who is a pretty versatile player. Plays up near the box. They used him in a lot of blitz packages, a lot of sub packages at Miami. I think it's a good safe pick there, but also one that helps you in a lot of ways potentially right away.
Keontae Scott's somebody you can trust out there too. I think that's something where there is question marks on Tyreek Stevenson at that just with play on the field, right? And I would love to see Tyreek because of the frame that he has, the ability that he has. You'd love to see Tyreek really win them over, but remember, Courtney, me and you were doing this pod last year during the end of the season, and we're like, why isn't Tyreek touching the field? Like we're starting to see names that we didn't expect to play in this game get onto the field before Tyreek
Sure.
Stevenson. So I think that there is a lot of trust that has to be rebuilt there. And I do think that corner is going to be something that will be addressed in this draft. I'd be a little shocked if the Bears focused in on corner I guess I can't say that because technically the guy I'm about to say is a corner.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that he probably slots in at a safety. So I think DB will be a focus here. But I'd be shocked if they were saying, we want to replace our $50 million guy in Kyler Gordon. We want to find the next guy to step in for Tyreek Stevenson, especially just because Zay Frazier is still here and we haven't seen him and the Bears took him high. But I wouldn't be surprised by it. And I do think DB is going to be something they address because when I looked at this pick, I went, okay, there's a cornerback on the market that fits the build style that these guys want, but maybe doesn't slot out as a cornerback in the NFL. 6'2", 200 pounds, ran a 4.3 40 at the combine, adding that speed that Dennis Allen wants. Traden Stukes is the name that I went with here. And a lot of people have talked about how he fits in as a safety more in the NFL than as a corner. Now, I don't know if I believe that fully, but the one thing that I will say is hard hitter, plays the game the right way. And the part that I love about his game most is reacts like a corner when he gets put in that safety position. Very similar to a guy that's currently on the roster that you signed this offseason in Kobe Bryant. Reads the quarterback's eyes, reacts, and just plays off of instinct. I think that he would be more of a safety here and you would fix your safety position at this point. But listen, like I think you can't ignore any of the things you just said there about Tyreek Stevenson and the mistrust there. The fact that he did play safety. We know they love that versatility where you can put a guy in different positions. To me, Traden Stukes kind of fills perfectly that Jaquan Brisker role where throw him wherever you want on the field. He's going to find a way to make a play.
Yeah. Like it's a position of need. And for me, that was one of the things I struggled with in this mock as I went through. It's like, where do you find the starting safety to play opposite Kobe Bryant? And in checking around, most people are projecting the run on safeties to go between the second and fourth round. So if you don't come away with one there, and I don't want to like give away my pick of where I found one, I think that it would be a little bit. I think would be pretty challenging, and they wouldn't be feeling great going into day 3 if they don't already have one. Whether it's at 57, whether it's at 60 with that extra second round pick, but it's a necessary pick. It's one that I think second round feels like a sweet spot to stay on defense again. And yeah, like my third pick, so my second of two second rounders.
Round pick.
This is where I stay on defense for back-to-back picks. I went Derek Moore, the edge rusher from Michigan. I mean, his production the last couple of years, there's kind of been like a steady increase there to where he had double-digit sack season last year. This is a position that has to be addressed. It has to be addressed early if you want somebody that can come in right away, and you expect them to compete for a starting job. So
Yeah.
I felt good walking away from day, the first, part of day 2 of the draft with 2 defensive players. One who I think gives you a lot of depth early on, like really high quality, good depth, and maybe finds his way into playing in Keontae Scott, and somebody, at the edge position, which we needed to address at some point, and Derek Moore, who can be in the mix to start right away opposite Montez Sweat.
Yeah, Derek Moore, this was the tough part for me because Derek Moore was on the board still, and the player that I took was on the board still. Derek Moore was difficult because you see the pass rush ability right away. It jumps off of the page. First step, really good. I think he does a good job using his strength to get guys out of his way. But he also has those different pass rush moves that you've been dying to see from guys on this defensive line. Now, here is where maybe I go a little oppo because I do think that, right, the highs are high with Derek Moore. The second round, you kind of expect this, though. You're going to need a little coaching to bring that ceiling a little bit closer. The run game, I didn't love Derek Moore, and I like him. I didn't love him. I ended up going Danny Dennis Sutton at this pick. He was
From
still
Penn
available.
State.
And my reasoning on this, and maybe this is the wrong mindset to have, and maybe this is one that Ryan Poles would never have, but I need a single player on this team that I just don't have to worry about. Like Danny Dennis Sutton, I don't think the numbers jump off of the page at you. I don't think you would say his sack production jumps off the page at you. But the thing that continues to jump off the page to me is I would use the same thing that Ryan Poles said about Ozzie Trapillo last season. After you watch his tape for a while, you start to get bored because it's not exciting. It's not flash. It's just he does his job and the job gets done. He consistently creates pressure around the quarterback. Doesn't always sack the quarterback. I think that's something that's going to have to be developed. He gets there, but misses at times. But in the run game, you're talking about a guy that can set the edge. You're talking about a guy that can force a running back out of bounds. Like, I think to me, Derek Moore, maybe, I wouldn't even say maybe, Derek Moore higher upside and probably where you'll see the Bears go when you talk about BPA if both of these guys are available. But I just trust that day one, we're going to be able to throw Danny Dennis Sutton out there and just go, all right, it's his job. We'll figure out the rest of it from here. But him and Montez are going to be your two edges coming into this season.
Yeah, I think either way, either player, if you walk away from round 2 having already addressed, you addressed 2 big needs with pass rush. Yeah. You got Peter Woods and you got an edge rusher in Dennis Sutton over there from Penn State. I think they'll be feeling pretty good about the state of the defense, that these are players handpicked by Dennis Allen. These fit my scheme. These are players I project to be a big part of what we're doing, how the way he rotates the interior of the defensive line to having somebody who can be a stalwart out there at edge opposite Sweat. So it'll free up Sweat to maybe get some of those one-on-one matchups that he just didn't have a whole ton of last year and win them. I think they'd be feeling pretty good about that. And they have the safety in there. So, I'm starting to like yours more than I like mine. But my third round pick, this is their way of having Garrett Bradbury for now. Because remember, he's only here for right now. He's only here for 1 year. They traded for him with a year left on his contract, and then bringing in a center at 89 to learn for a year. And then
we're locked in here. We're locked in.
Yeah, learn for a year, take over the job eventually. So I took Sam Hecht from Kansas State. He was available to me there. I think the third round, from everything that you read about where you can find really good interior offensive linemen, and there might be a run on these guys, I think third round is probably the sweet spot for that. So I went with Sam Hecht, center from Kansas State, with the 89th pick.
Sam Hecht was gone. I believe the Bills took him in my mock, which kind of threw me for a loop and also pissed me off. I really wanted to get Sam Hecht because he was the perfect sit and learn for a year, understand the game, but still at the age that you wanted. So I was a little bit upset that Sam Hecht was gone at that point. So, but we were locked in there. I think third round is where you have to get your center of the future. And by the way, I think when we say center of the future, right, this is the NFL. The future could be 5 years. The future could be 8 years. You'd love it to be 10, 12, 15. More than likely, that's not going to happen. That's not how this works. You're going to have to address this at a certain point anyway. So I went with a guy that I feel is the best talented center on the board, but he also comes in as the oldest center on the board, and Logan Jones out of Iowa. Like, to me, Courtney, when I looked at him and you see essentially everything that you saw from who's a center that ended up going to Vegas this year.
Linderbaum, Tyler
Linderbaum.
Linderbaum.
Yeah, you gotta stick that ER on that one. Tyler Linderbaum, right? He to me, I see Logan Jones being that kind of player. The problem is him and Tyler Linderbaum are pretty much the same age. So you're coming into this saying, yeah, we've got Garrett Bradbury, but Logan Jones comes in competing for this job, and you're kind of hoping he wins it because you want to get as much squeeze out of this juice as you can here for Logan Jones. But I think that it's something that has to be addressed. You want to go into this with a player that is going to be in front of Caleb Williams for the next 5 to 8 seasons, and you don't want to keep swapping out this center position year over year. So I went center here in the 3rd round, and I think he could be a really good piece that could start for you this season, which if your toughest decision is we've got 2 solid centers here, you're doing pretty good, and you're doing much better than we've seen the Bears do on O-line for a long time.
Yeah, I think it's the right play to have your answer for now and your answer for later, and not having to have somebody. I mean, they clearly prioritize that position, so much so with trading for Garrett Bradbury, being aggressive about it, fixing a big hole right away. I mean, the leadership aspect, somebody who comes in as a rookie might be a little bit older, but still can have a chance to learn from underneath, or, learn from somebody who's done it, and just know what it's going to take. Cause we talk about how important that quarterback center exchange is. I mean, Caleb's not a rookie anymore. He's in year 3. So he's going to have things that he wants to, have done in a specific way by whoever's playing center for him. So I think it's good to have, it's good that the age of which, they'd be drafting a rookie center when Caleb's going to be, those two would be playing when Caleb's in year 4.
Right.
I think that that's the right play for the long-term aspect here. So it's best player. It checks the best player available box at that spot, and it addresses a need, but not a need for right now. So moving to the 4th round, which is 129.
Yeah.
I don't love this pick here, but he was the best player, highest rated player available when I was on the board. And it's Reggie Virgil, the wide receiver from Texas Tech. And I know that, the receiver room right now has quite a bit of depth. They're bringing Khalif Raymond this offseason. Ben Johnson clearly thinks very highly of him. He'll have a role not only as a returner, but also as a receiver here in Chicago. This, to me, a 4th round receiver, sometimes they turn into, stars on your team, and it works out. I was really trying not to reach for a safety here, which is why I didn't. And I kind of am mad at myself about that, because I don't address that pick till the 7th round. Because remember, they have that gap between the 4th round and the 7th round. So I don't love this pick, but in terms of value and in terms of positional value, in terms of need, 2 things that don't really align, but I felt like it was the best thing for me to do if I was trying to quote unquote stay true to the board.
Yeah, and when you get to this point, listen, you kind of start to have to go BPA. I think the one thing about talking receiver here is you've got a massive question mark, unfortunately, on one of your top guys on this team. And I don't think that it's something that the Bears completely ignore in this draft. And I don't take one until that 7th round comes in. But I do think it's something that they're going to look at. They're going to look at guys who have a ton of upside. And so I'm not mad at that pick at all. Here is where I went cornerback on this one, getting back in on defense here. I went Jalen Kilgore out of South Carolina.
Okay.
And a specific reason on this is when you look at Peter Woods, when you look at Danny Dennis Sutton, the 2 things that you expect them to help pretty quickly is the run game. I think this is going to be something that a Jalen Kilgore extra emphasizes during this process, right? He adds that elite ability to get running backs down, a really good tackler. As far as a coverage corner, I would not say that he would be my first choice out there, but in some of those nickel packages, I think that he could be a player that could give you a ton of production. And to me, I think more than likely, you're not going to fix both your pass rush and your run game this offseason. If you tell me that by adding Devin Bush, Neville Gallimore, right, Kobe Bryant, who I think is going to be really big, you go out there and you find some pieces to help them out in the run game and you force teams to be pretty pass heavy, guess what? We saw a team with a terrible defensive line last season be able to get a ton of takeaways when teams wanted to go pass heavy versus them. So if I'm going to address anything, I'm going to address the run. I like Jalen Kilgore at this spot because I think he emphasizes that.
Yeah, I think that knowing how they handled free agency and like what, the pieces that they brought in, they focused on linebacker, they focused on the interior of the defensive line. You can go and choose your spots elsewhere in the draft to be able to fill some other holes to try to like complete this picture. I like it. I think that your draft obviously is very defense heavy, which,
oh yeah, only one offensive player off the board to this point.
That's the only part I'm skeptical about, because I know that Ben Johnson obviously is, you said it, like he's an offensive guy. They do have some really good pieces that, getting Garrett Bradbury was big for them in free agency, but they still went very defense heavy in free agency. So I'd be curious to see how he'd be feeling going into, the later rounds of the draft, where they're going to have to sit out as of right now, rounds 5 and 6, because they don't have picks there. So let's go to the 7th round. I'll give you my 2 picks here, because we don't have to go like too deep into.
Yeah, we don't got to break these guys down massively.
This one, so I had Jalen Husky, safety out of Maryland, at 239. That's my first of 2 7th round picks. And I don't know, the PFF mock simulator gave me a B+ for it. I think it was just being kind. For where he's drafted, it's probably a good pick. For what the Bears need in 2026, are you trusting a 7th round rookie to be your starting safety? That's probably not a bet that I'm willing to make. But I needed to get a safety. The hardest thing, my biggest takeaway from this is that if you don't get one rounds 4 through, 2 through 4, first off, they don't have a 5th and a 6th round pick. You're waiting a long time, and that's when the run is. So get one early. If I could go back and do this over again, because I only did one, I didn't want to go through the exercise of trying to make the perfect mock draft, because when you're on the clock, you can't do that. I would have drafted one earlier. And then for my other pick, I just think that, the Kyle Manon guy set the bar really high for running backs, drafted in the 7th round for this team, made such a huge impact that I think that there will always be a position that they draft on day 3, and that will be running back. Terrian Stewart from Virginia Tech. So got him at 241. I'm happy, at least complete wise. I feel like I addressed every position, but not the I don't know if I found starters, especially at safety. And with Keontae Scott, they already have a starting nickel right now, but to me, it's I found really high end insurance for him and a potential option for later. But I feel if I had to give myself a grade, I'd probably give it a B- right now, because this is my first full 7 round mock. It's just, I just really wish I would have found a safety. I'd be feeling a lot better if I found a safety earlier in the draft.
So my final 2, and I think this is gonna, raise some eyebrows, because why would you go this position when you're locked in with 2 guys? I still think, Courtney, that backup quarterback or 3rd string quarterback is going to be a question when we get to camp, because teams are going to start looking around and going, we don't really love what we have here. And that Tyson Bagent kid is on a very affordable deal. And I think the Bears it would be shocking to me if someone came to the Bears with draft capital for their backup quarterback and they said, no, there's no way that we take it. Now, it does have to be capital that's worth it, right? But realistically speaking, especially in this upcoming draft, if there's a team that feels like Tyson Bagent can be, as Ben Johnson said, one of the best 32 quarterbacks, I think you have to prepare for the possibility that he may not be here this season. And so with 239, I went Cole Payton out of NDSU. There's been some really good quarterbacks that have come out of MDSU. There's also North Dakota State University, for those who didn't know. There's also been some stinkers, right? Trey Lance is also there, but some people would say he hasn't gotten an opportunity. But Carson Wentz, I think, was one of the probably the best quarterbacks to come out of there.
Played
more than likely.
Got a team to a Super Bowl. Didn't play in it, but got a team to a Super Bowl.
So I think that's a guy you take a chance on, a little bit older, so he kind of knows his game, has a little bit of speed that he can utilize, has the passing ability, and somebody that Ben Johnson can develop. I think Cole Payton would be one that he eyes there. And then I finish it off with J. Michael Sturdivant in that fight with that final pick there. I think wide receiver is going to be something that's going to be addressed in this draft at some point. Now, maybe this is a little too late, right? You've got guys on the back end of the roster. I know we've all got Jade Walker a little bit higher, but listen, he's still fighting for a spot here to prove that, hey, I should be an every game player. You've got your JP Richardsons on this team that are on the practice squad. I think J. Michael Sturdivant comes in and brings that competition, brings that ability to go up and get the ball. And he's somebody that, again, Ben Johnson can look at and say, this may not be the sexy pick, but it's something that I can develop, especially going as defense heavy as I did in my mock draft. Now, realistically, I do think you're correct, Courtney. I think more than likely we're going to see an offensive player taken off the board before we get to 89 in this draft. But when you're talking about needs that the Bears have, if they went in and Ben Johnson said, you know what, I'm going to sit in the background on this one because no matter what, we have to fix this defense if we're going to be a Super Bowl caliber team, I wouldn't be surprised by that either. So PFF gave me a B- for the draft. I would say I probably did a little better. They view the Traden Stukes pick as a reach. I think that he's going to be slotted differently in the NFL. But outside of that, like if you tell me either one of our mocks, we walk away with legitimate answers, I feel like, with some of these young pieces that can play this season. And Courtney, I feel that is the one thing that is the most important. You can talk about 4 or 5 years down the road and hoping someone develops. That's what all of this is. But you need answers on this defense now. And Ryan Poles, by how he went out in free agency, said, I'm putting it on myself to fix this defensive line through the draft, something we haven't seen him do to this point.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact that by the end of day 2, you've got people that are going to be playing significant snaps for this team, you'd have to be feeling good about that. And I know with Ben Johnson having as big of a say as he does in personnel and just like with this team, I mean, his fingerprints were all over the roster during the first draft. It was very obvious with them picking Colston Loveland, picking Luther Burden right away, then getting Ozzie Trapillo, so going heavy offense in the first 2 days. Does it have to flip now? No, not necessarily. I just think that he also is understanding that if, the offense had to carry the defense. It a lot of ways.
A lot of the season last year. Yeah.
So I think if you don't want to put your offense in a bind like that, he's going to be more than understanding to, try to put his team in a better spot by fixing some of the big glaring issues. And he said it himself, he's like, yeah, I understand it. I got it. We need a pass rush, but it's also about rushing coverage. And that's why, with the cornerbacks, safety, obviously, that plays into what this defense is able, the capabilities of this defense, that I think he'd be okay walking away with a heavier defensive output in the draft in the first couple rounds.
Is there a position that you think is going to be tough for the Bears that they need to address? It's going to be just, like tackle for me. I think that if a tackle's there, they may take him, but I don't think this is a draft you can reach for a left tackle that may end up moving inside or not. That would be the toughest one.
That's what I struggled with Caden Proctor, because I do think he's, you hear certain NFL execs will say he should be a top 10, top 5 pick. He's a huge individual. So obviously, I think conditioning, weight, all those things will factor in. What shape does he show up in? If you draft him as high as I did, you'd have to be able to rely on him right away. But if he's not there, when do you get another offensive tackle? Because I do think that they have to come away with one in this draft, just knowing what the situation looks like right now for the 2026 season and beyond that. I don't think that's one that they have to, whether you're going to go high draft capital and expect this player to play right away, or somebody that you'll throw into the mix and be like, all right, well, maybe, because Ozzie Trapillo was maybe he can play left tackle this year. And he did, and it worked out. And it's very much the belief that they have in Dan Rochar and what he's able to do in the development process of these players. But I think for me, the position was safety, just because I didn't like that. I kept passing through each round, and it just felt like, all right, well, I'd be reaching for this player because the ones I wanted was gone. And sometimes that happens. You're just going to have to take somebody, you don't want to. And every team's going to be like, oh no, we're going to go best player available. We've stacked our board to go best player available time and time again. You might have to reach if you know that you don't have a player on your roster currently on the 90-man, that is capable of starting at that position, and you have a big opening. So that's one that just gives me a little pause. But I do think that, knowing that the run's probably 2nd to 4th round, that they will have to make sure that they come away with one before the beginning of or I guess the middle of day 3.
Now, credit to Ryan Poles. Last time we said that, Courtney, as we were watching every single running back come off the board, somehow the Chicago Bears end up with the best rookie running back going in the second round. So maybe your safety scenario is not the wrong one, and they find him and they're able to develop
I don't know, though. I feel like just the positional value of running backs, you can always find one, whether like late in the draft, undrafted free agency. Like safety, I would just be a little bit more wary of them going as long as I did. So hopefully they're smarter than me and they use the earlier parts of the draft to find Jaquan Brisker / Kevin Byard's replacement.
Let us know how you guys feel about both our mock drafts in the comments below. We'll drop both of them in the comments so that you can see them listed out there. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do, and drop your mock draft in the comments below. We're going to be doing, I believe, 2 more mock drafts before the draft actually hits here, and then draft is this coming week, Courtney, so we're going to have plenty to talk about here coming up. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and showing love. As always, for Courtney Cronin, it's your boy, Pat the Designer. Back at it again. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Bear down. One love. Peace.
When it comes to my ride, I don't mess around. Advantage Chevrolet. 3 locations, Chicagoland's covered. You want a Chevy? They've got it. You want savings? Oh, yeah. Most important, trust. No runaround. They shoot you straight. Advantage Chevrolet Bridgeview. Together, let's drive.